Hey, what's up, DeRacers? We are back with a new upgrade to our tool. So for the new players, we will be going through this with a bit more detail, but also for the people that have been around that are familiar with the tools, there's a lot of updates in this thing. Mystery's been working hard on it, so we'll be kicking things off and diving right in.
Yeah, we are calling this the DeRacers Stable Assessment 5.0, and its focus is largely on separating champ data from donkey data. And that'll make more sense in just a minute, but we want to point out how you get started if you want to be able to pull down a lot of additional data for your stable.
Yep, and a big shout out to OXG from SMR. So ever since D-Race came out with the worst times or the donkey races, we now have extra data. So we had to go through and make a lot of updates. Now, when you make a copy of this, that's the first thing you need to do is make a copy so it is your version of it. And then when you turn this thing on, for those that know us and trust us, the app script here, just go ahead and click on this button, go through and authorize it and allow it. For the people that don't know us too well, the app script is just basically we had to write code that exists on the back end. You can see it from the app script section of Sheets if you want, and it just allows us to process large amounts of data. So if you do not do this, the horse analysis tab will still work, but the other ones will not.
Yep, exactly. So once you go through that entire process and you make sure you've granted permissions for app scripts to run, if you want to, you can jump over to your stable overview. And this has got some major changes here. But the biggest thing is the two yellow columns on the left-hand side. For those that are using the app scripts or not, you're going to want to fill in all of your horses' names and IDs for your stable, or really any horses that you want to analyze. You can put other people's in here. This is a great way to assess other people, especially if you've got a team or just really any quantity of horses. I think you can get up to 100 different horses in this list, and it will pull down the data.
Yep. So now the app script is connected to this button. So if you populate your horses and you do not run the app script, nothing's going to show up on this page. Once you finish this, you press this button right here and it's going to process. It takes a while. The more horses, the more data. But once it processes, you'll see everything that's going to illuminate. Traditionally, up to this column E has been what everybody's been using, but Mr. E's been working hard. And from G to the right, there's a lot of new stuff. So how about you kick things off and tell us about the champion surface?
Yeah, so we've modified a few things. It used to be that you spend more of your time zeroing in on specific surfaces, but we wanted to put the left-hand side of this sheet a focus on your stable as a whole. So you see total profit, total races, and your average PPR for each of your horses, as well as combined. But then directly to the right of that, we've now separated out champion or best time race data from donkey surface ratings, which is your worst time race data. And something that's really key that I had fun with is being able to identify your donkey horses with this brown coloring. Brown is actually good in this case. Gold is good for your champion horses. So we've highlighted dirt, synthetic, and turf PERF scores, or performance scores, for those that don't know what that is. We'll talk about those in just a minute. But then also highlighting if they're good across all surfaces. And then obviously the horses that don't get highlighted here are some of your mid-level horses. But being able to look at champion data and separate it from donkey data means that you can zero in on certain tracks that you know your horse is good at on one or the other. And then over to the far hand, right-hand side, we have put the TD specific or track and distance specific data where you can see classification ratings, your performance score, as well as profits and number of races on specific tracks. So here you see Dirt 7, and it will give you all of your horses in your stable, their scores, so that you can analyze the difference between your different horses on different tracks.
Now, something that I really like about this is that before the worst times and before this tool, you had no purpose of running your crappy horses. And so when we take a look at this, especially for the new people, the dirt, synth, and turf, those are the surface types. And then these numbers are what are called the perf score. And that's been a community score that is a really good assessment of knowing how strong a horse is. Now, your overall total, that just is bragging rights. It doesn't necessarily mean a horse is perfect, because I would rather have a horse that has just an insane single surface than an overall total, because that would mean that that horse just dominates on this track. But when you have horses that can put up huge numbers, they're all illuminated, that's usually a sign that this horse likes that surface, and then you just need to figure out its stamina rating. Now, coming down here to my Lord of Donks, I expected this horse to suck. And sure enough, you could see it did not illuminate anything. A 4 for a dirt surface, a 13 for a synth. I mean, this is bad. But then when you now move over to the donkey surface, you'll notice that it has browns across the board, and it's putting up a total of 175 as a donkey. So this horse had no purpose, but now it's been pretty fun running this and seeing where the brown shows up, and it's helping me really understand how can I run these bad horses in a way that's profitable to my stable so I can start to recuperate a lot of my deep reds from my early days of testing on champion tracks.
That's right. So now, assuming that you've listed all of your horses in the left-hand 2 columns here in yellow, what you're going to want to do is then jump over to your horse analysis tab. And let's go ahead and if you don't have it, let's start here actually. A new start is a horse that you've only really started running it on dirt. It doesn't have a great dirt score yet, but it has a couple of tracks that you might want to zero in on. You're making a little bit of profit on some of them. And then those brown average furlong indicators are your good donkey tracks. The green means you're going too fast comparative to the population average furlong, which means you need to go slower because these are donkey races. You want to get last place if you can, which gives you a better rating. But everything from top to bottom in terms of classifications, which is a combination of your indisputable and weighted win scores, as well as your win rates and podium rates and races and all the other stuff that's familiar from previous tools, are all there, even though we're looking at donkey specific race types. So up in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see that we've modified the list a little bit of things that you can select from. The main one being that we are now zeroing in on a race type, which is donkey comparative to champion. And these data sets are separate. They are not combined data. So if you have not run any worst time races, you will see nothing appear for your donkey race type stats. You will, however, still see all of your old champion data once that loads up.
Yeah, this one I don't think it's been so long. So if I switch over to, let's go with like Lord of Donks and get a sense of this horse.
Yeah, so assuming that we can get Lord of Donks champion data to show up here, you will see all of the same classification ratings, indisputable scores, weighted wins, and all of that data will appear. All right, now that we see the champion data loaded up here, everything should be familiar. If you've run enough races, you'll get classification scores, you'll get your indisputable scores, etc. And this horse, as you can see, had red on its average furlongs across the dirt tracks. So you were right to say, hey, this probably has a strong chance of being good at dirt. But this particular horse also has horrible scores on synthetic and turf. And so you decided to run them everywhere. So if we look at Lord of Donks donkey data, let's just see if that data will show up now. You'll see that you started scoring everywhere. You have an overall rating of 175, but even more importantly, you're showing up on all 3 surfaces. And that's what's really interesting here. Now, you went and hit every track. You don't need to do that. In fact, you're actually running pretty fast on some of your dirt tracks right now, which is very interesting to see. So you're going to have to, after X amount, maybe turn off some of these because you're not making any money on those.
Yep.
But this is how you're going to be able to go back and forth between donkey data and champion data. And we wanted to separate those out. And then the coloring is how you're going to separate which one you're focusing on.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing, so now for more of the OG players out there that especially are participating in the UnRaced tournaments by Dirk Army, everybody should do that, but that can be a different conversation. So the way that this game works, the people that play it, they understand it, but now when you scroll far over to the far right-hand side, it's going to be your top 10 realized, and it's going to show you your top 10 potential tracks. So what's nice about this is as you're running it, there might be a tiny bit of data and anomalies between the way the Dirk Army processes it. It's usually just due to a rounding error. So just know that you trust the Dirk Army leaderboards, not this one. They might be very, very, very slightly off, but they're going to be close.
So now,
go ahead.
I was just going to point something out, that those numbers, the way those are calculated, are taking a multiplier of your weighted win percentage and your indisputable percentage, combining the two, and then multiplying by 100. So we're able to look at and create a performance score based on those two combined stats. And then in the upper right-hand corner of the screen right now, you'll see this key that allows you to identify if a horse is showing up as a top track, having a score of 5.5 or greater. So when we look down here, which Vamp's going to talk about in a second, if we look at a Synth 6, for example, it's 13.15. That's an incredible score for a horse to have performance-wise. Now, it's only run 18 times, but that's actually pretty good for 18 runs. So being able to maintain anything over a 5.5 is going to give you a very high performance classification rating.
And so you combined this tool with either ARM or SMR Speed Racer. Both of them, I believe, have accounting capabilities in place. It's going to help you get closer and closer to picking out your 10 tracks to make sure that you don't overscore and then or overshoot your tracks and lose your score. But like for those that are new to this one, just the real quick 20-second rundown is that it's usually a multiple week event where you are racing brand new horses and trying to get the maximum top 5 tracks. So what we do here is they score the top 5 of all of your tracks, and it gives you your total perf score, and the competition scored on that. So while you're doing your discovery and you're trying to figure out the places to run, these indicators on the right-hand side make it just massively invaluable in order to adjust your strategy mid-season.
Yep. Now, another thing that's been asked of us / I found powerful is I will use the rankings tab, and that's something that we have in this tool as well. And I wanted to point out, for those that have used this tool in the past, you can rank your horses by their win rates and their indisputable scores and their average pace and lower limit numbers and stuff like that. But we added in, excuse me, the slowest pace, and it's basically just an invert of the fastest pace. Looking at your average times, if you have not started running donkey races, you don't know where your worst time or your worst time races should be targeting, you're going to want to use this tool to invert your stable and see who runs slow on a particular track. In this case, we've got Dirt 2s, and we're going to look at Anita or No Name or Ivana as probably our main targets for running donkey races in that particular TD.
Yep. Now, remember, to use this part of the tool, you do have to accept the app script, but there's a lot more that we could dive into this, but you could play around with it. The other elements, just to point out, is that with DeRace, the clubs and team stuff is going to be showing up soon. So there's going to be a lot of this moving on the platform. But in the meantime, highly recommend find a team, connect with them, and get set up, because I have a feeling a lot more excitement is going to be coming around towards the clubs.
Yep. So everybody out there, go ahead and grab a copy. Make sure you make a copy for yourself of the new 5.0 stable assessment tool, and load up your stable and see if you've got any opportunities to hit some of those new worst time tracks.